George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie, Wolves, is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie, Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
Did you know Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company? They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just quarterback Peyton Manning, I'm also meditating Manning. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
What the f*** do you mean what am I talking about? You're talking you! Minor league mother is what you are.
Tell you guys something right f***ing now. It's not easy to be a f***ing champion, all right? It's the hardest f***ing thing there is to do. Are you guys that f***ing good? You're not. I'll tell you that right the f*** now. Wise up. Buddy, go ahead and say what the f*** you want to say.
Oh, we certainly got a lot to say on this week's episode. Welcome aboard 86, the Wally Backman Show. My name is Bruce Jacobs, and of course, that man right there sitting with that beautiful piece of garment on is our star, Wally Backman. Wally, good to see you this week. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, Bruce. I'm looking forward to the show, and let's get going, buddy, because there's a lot to talk about today.
Oh, my goodness gracious. By the way, I like the uni, man. You're looking good.
No, it was, I got this at the Old Timers Day, and Steiner was trying to buy all the jerseys and hand the jersey away, and there was probably 5 or 6 of us. We were not giving our jerseys away that we were given for the Old Timers Day. So, hey, it's what I got. I put it on today. You'll see earlier where I'm putting it on, but I might wear it every day. I don't know until the Mets win the World Series. I might wear it every day.
Yeah, don't take it off and don't change anything. Coming up, John Harper, multimedia star. You see him on SNY. Folks, if you want to get in contact with the show, we have a full segment of a lot of social media coming down. There are many ways to get in touch with Wally. You can start with X. It's Wally_Backman6. On Instagram, it's at Wally Backman, at Wally_Backman86. Excuse me. It's at Wally_Backman86. On YouTube, youtube.com/The Wally Backman Show. You can also email the program, The Wally Backman Show at gmail.com. Facebook at Wally Backman, and you can get me on email at chbr40@gmail.com. Without further ado, a little special open today, Wally. Here we go.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
Yeah, that's what they said about the Mets when they came into in 1962, that people would come. Wally, a sad week for the Mets. One of the great voices of Hollywood, my opinion. We'll have more on this later. The most dominating presence in terms of voice in Hollywood, James Earl Jones, the voice right there from A Field of Dreams. Wally, he passed away, and a guy I know you knew, Eddie Kranepool, also the fourth Met from the '69 team to pass away this year.
There's been it's been a rough year for the New York Mets and for New York. I mean, we lost Eddie Kranepool just a few days ago. Great person. Went to the big leagues at 17 years old. I got not a whole lot of stories about Eddie, but Eddie was when he went to the big leagues at 17. I asked Eddie at the Old Timers Day that, Eddie, what was that like? And he was totally in shock what happened at 17 years old. But God rest his soul. Eddie was such a great guy. There's other people to mention. Eddie Kranepool was a really good friend of mine. We didn't associate as much because of our years in difference, but whenever we had a conversation, what a great conversation we had, but you can't forget about Jerry Grody. Buddy Harrelson was such a huge influence on me. Jim McAndrews, these guys all passed away in this last year, and great players for the Mets, had a huge impact on the Mets. It's just, it's so hard to it gets me a little bit emotional to lose these people that were great people for the New York Mets and for the city of New York.
Wally, I was reading about Eddie Kranepool, who I came to the Mets. I started when he more developed into the specialty of the pinch hitting role that he did very well in. But Wally, how about this? As we're watching the game yesterday, and you and I are going over the show while the game is on, and this Bowden guy is no-hitting the Mets. Ed Kranepool's first game as a New York Met, 1962, 0 for 3. Sandy Koufax no-hit the Mets that day. How about that, Wally? His first game.
But for
no hit.
No, that would be like I'm trying to think who I would have faced my first year. And I was 20 when I went to the big leagues. I thought I was young, but Eddie Kranepool facing this guy at 17, 18 years old, whatever it might have been. It's to face those great pitchers at such a young age is something that I wish I could share it with everybody, to all the fans and things, and just step into the batter's box and see what it's like to face one of these guys. And Eddie, great human being, great player, great New York Mets, might be my favorite Met. So, again, God rest his soul. My everything goes out to his family. What a superhuman being.
Yeah. The last word, we'll have a lot of this to social media. Jerry Koosman, who said Ed Kranepool was the best first baseman I ever played with. That's, listen, he played with some pretty good first basemen, maybe not Hall of Famers, but, some pretty good first basemen. And Jerry Koosman was a fantastic pitcher.
It might have been the best for the New York Mets. Might be the best left-hander for the New York Mets. There's a lot of other guys. But what a great pitcher, but, another 100% class act.
Yeah, totally agree. Might be. I think it would come down to him and Johan Santana. Some would throw John Matlack in there, and that would be quite a vote. We will have a vote later on concerning our boy James Earl Jones. We've got some news, though. Let's start with this, Wally, and I find this to be one of these baseball things that's just remarkable. Today, Kumar Rocker is going to make his major league debut for the Texas Rangers. Now, Met fans, our number one pick from Vanderbilt, number 10 overall a couple of years ago, the Mets knew he would be a risk because he had some issues. He's a big man, throws hard, and the forecast was he could run into some arm problems. They still took him at number 10 while he never signed him. And he will be pitching for Texas. And how about this? Jacob deGrom is going to pitch for Texas on Friday, and Max Scherzer So the next 3 games of the Rangers, they're all pitching ex-Mets. But I tell you, this Kumar Rocker, keep your eye on this guy.
Well, I look at some things, and I look at what's happened in the past. When I was actually with the New York Mets as a manager in a minor league system, and I look at a lot of things. I look at Coomer, who was a number 1 pick. We got Lugo, who's with the Kansas City Royals. We got Zach Wheeler, who won a Cy Young last year for the Philadelphia Phillies. These were all part of the New York Mets, and I have a hard time trying to figure out, why did we get rid of some of these guys? I mean, I know money is always an object, but these are some really, really good pitchers. And Coomer's going to be good. I'm telling you, this guy's going to pitch his ass off tonight. But to lose these guys and what we've talked about in the past, that God, it would be nice to have Wheeler as a number 1 and Lugo as a number 2. You know what the Mets did with Lugo out of the bullpen, started him.
Now you had Lugo in the minors, right? You had Lugo in the minor leagues.
I had him in AAA, and he wasn't. I had him in the PCL. He wasn't really good. ERA was high. Hits to walks were okay. All that kind of stuff was good. But this guy was so determined. This is things that analytics can't supply. The determination of a player. And this guy went for me with a 6 ERA in the PCL, which is really probably a 4, to go to the Mets, and he had a 2-some ERA when he went to the Mets. When I called him up, I was shocked. But the kid's determination really matters. And so when people just look at numbers and they don't look at what's inside of the individual, you're making mistakes. You got to look inside what the individual is. And these guys, again, hey, if I went to the playoffs tomorrow and I had those 3 guys, including Manaea, if I had those guys pitching in the postseason, I'd feel really good about myself,
Yeah.
So they don't have those guys. The Phillies have their number 1 starter in Zach Wheeler, why we got rid of this guy. I could go on and on and on about why we lost some players and who got rid of these players. I go on and on and on about these guys, but it's unfortunate. Great players.
Lugo was so dominant the other day against the Yankees. He is the first pitcher. That's the first time in Yankee history, Wally, that their lineup had no walks, no extra base hits, and struck out at least 14 times. And only 3 balls the Yankees hit off of Lugo. And I'm not really a big fan of this stat, but exit velocity, only 3 balls were hit 95 plus on the velo on exit velocity.
That's not hard.
That is a well pitched.
Yeah, Lugo.
Yeah, I mean, we miss Lugo. He's a quality pitcher.
Oh, he's quality. He didn't light up the radar gun. He throws strikes. He knows how to pitch. But certain people want to see the radar gun lit up. But you know what? If Greg Maddux couldn't light up the radar gun, how good was he? Isn't he in the Hall of Fame?
He is in the Hall of Fame. I swear I could hit the guy, and I couldn't even touch the guy.
No, he never threw hard. So, you know what? All these analytics talk about velocities out of hand. I want to know what the ball is crossing home plate. And I don't want to know the movement when it's crossing home plate. So these are things that they really don't judge. So, Maddux was 89, 92, but his ball was moving so much in the strike zone that it was hard to hit. And I faced
Yeah.
him way too many times, and I don't even want to know what my batting average was against him. But he was a great Hall of Famer. God rest his, I mean, what a great guy. But some of this stuff that some of these people do now with analytics is it's all bullshit, Bruce. It's 100% bullshit because they don't know. They never stepped into the box. They never seen a ball that sinks 4 or 5 inches. Somebody on the other day said a guy ball was moving 14 inches. Bullshit. Nobody's baseball moves 14 inches. It just don't happen. But to see some of these guys that have accomplished some of the things, and I've kind of went off the beaten path, but you know what? Seth Lugo, these guys, Coomer Rocker, Power Arm, Zach Wheeler. How the fuck did we get rid of 2 of those guys? I don't know. But
Wally, I could see in the case of Zach Wheeler because you have 5, 6 pitchers. You can't keep all of them. His money demands were high, which, by the way, he's certainly done. He certainly earned his check. But, when you have Syndergaard and you have Matz and you have Harvey and you have DeGrom, at some point, you'd like to cultivate all the talent, but it's hard for me I miss Wheeler, but it's hard for me to rip them for, he was always hurt. And so they elected not to re-sign him. Hey, kudos to him. He's done a great job with the Phillies, unfortunately.
right. I would have if I go to the David Stern part, the general manager for the Mets, I'll bet you this guy would have signed all those guys. And I don't know what it would have cost, but in New York, Syndergaard, Harvey, Matz, DeGrom, Wheeler, I would have kept those guys as long as I could have kept them because that is a dynasty. Those pitchers were a dynasty. Harvey was a bust a little bit, and I love Matt Harvey. Don't get me wrong. This is one of my favorite pitchers that I ever had. But he had some issues and things like that. So, but if you could have kept those guys together, can you imagine going into the 2024 season with DeGrom, Syndergaard, Harvey, Matz, those guys? And we haven't even talked about Seth Lugo. I mean, we did, but can you imagine Seth Lugo coming in to set up Diaz to close the game? I mean, you're going to have a lot of games that are they're over.
That's pretty. You're right. They're over. Right. They're over. Okay. The Mets have the Phillies this weekend. The Braves have the Dodgers. The Diamondbacks host the Brewers, and the Padres are at the Giants. Okay, that's the schedule. But another schedule we're keeping our eye on because history is on the line. Wally, let's get to our This Week in White Sox Misery.
Oh, my God. White Sox. I coached for these guys. I managed for them for 3 years.
Okay. Now, Wally.
Go ahead.
Wally, you're 33. You're 33 and 114, Wally. How many of these guys do you really believe talk to each other and say, listen, man, we do not want to, really, do they actually talk to each other and say, look, we got to win 7 of our last 15 games, guys, or we're going down as the worst team? Do you think they really discuss this stuff, this sort of, or is it just for us to discuss?
You know what? In 1980, I got to go back. I got to go back to 1980. We did not want to lose 100 games. I was 20 years old. Veteran players were like, oh, fuck, we can't lose 100 games. We got to do whatever it's got to take to not lose 100 games. And I look at the White Sox, and I was with the White Sox. Great coaches, great minor league staff. I could go to the scouting system, Gary Pellant, Yogi. I called him Yogi. But I could go to so many guys that were scouts that I had a really good relationship, and a couple of them still work there. And I go. Joe Butler, they're on the verge of retirement, and it's like, what happened, man? And The White Sox have got to go. I'm looking at my notes here. I think they got to go 7-8 not to have the worst record.
That's right.
That's a good thing for the Mets.
They need to win.
That's a
7
good thing
games.
for the Mets.
Oh yeah, and that's why we're keeping, because we want to get the Mets out of probably.
No, we want them out. We want them out. We don't want to know that they were bad and all that
Right.
bullshit.
You know what's funny,
We
Wally?
want to know that the Mets were.
I read this article about Ed Kranepool, and I forget who wrote the article after Eddie passed away. And the author of the article, he said Eddie was active in rooting against, not to be mean-spirited, but Eddie was one of those guys who, because he did have a cup of coffee with the 62 Mets, but Eddie was one of those guys who he wanted the White Sox not to win 40 games. And it was something that, he talked about often, is not being part of the worst team in baseball.
Well, you know what? Eddie Kranepool, again, I go back to Eddie. It's hard to say how good a person he was. People don't understand when you don't. He lived in New York all those years, and he was born and raised there. But to be able to be with this individual was a special time, because there's a lot of stories. I can't remember them all. But the White Sox, take it. Go ahead. It's all yours. Take it over. We don't need to hear about that shit anymore. So,
by the way, here's the White Sox.
Really bad. In 5 games, I'll kiss your ass.
Here's the White Sox schedule the rest of the way. They got Oakland for 3 this weekend. They have 3 with the Angels, 3 with the Padres, 3 more with the Angels, and 3 with the Tigers, who are back in the AL wild card. So those games. So, you look at 9 games here, the Angels and the A's. The A's will give you a battle. I'm not sure about the Angels. Yeah. I think it's going to be close. Wally, I'm saying they win 38 games, because there's no way this wretched team is going to go 500 the rest of the way.
I am not going to argue with that. And you know what? I know Ronnie Washington with the Angels, and we played together, and he knows, and he doesn't want to lose to those guys. So I'm going to say that you're pretty right. If they win 30, can you imagine playing 162 games and only winning 38 games? That's going to be the most miserable time in your life.
I saw Jerry Reinsdorf came out yesterday and finally addressed this publicly. Don't worry what he said. He's 88 and he's foaming at the mouth. So I don't think he realizes his team really sucks that bad. All right, we're going to talk to John Harper, catch up on the pennant races, find out what Wally was like as a player. That's our interview segment.
Harper to column. Harper.
All right, welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. As promised, our guest this week, we decided to step back from the guys on the field and talk to a guy who's sitting up in the press box for many, many, many years. They used to call him a journalist. Now he's a multimedia personality, John Harper. You see him on SNY. I don't think you need any more of an introduction. How are you, John?
I'm good. You used, I think, one too many many's in there. Many, many, many years, Yeah. I've been around long enough to remember Wally breaking in. So it has been a long time, But yeah, a lot of doing. It's still a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad to see newspapers have kind of gone by the wayside, but still enough room for to carve out a little bit of a career doing TV. I do some writing for the SNY website, so still hanging around, trying to retire and play more golf, but not quite there yet.
Nice. We'll get into some of the differences in covering the team in just a little bit. Let's start out talking about the team. And I saw where right now the Mets have the 3rd hardest strength of schedule. Mets were 3rd. The Padres were at the other end. They were 19th. The Diamondbacks had the 11th. And the Braves had the 15th toughest schedule. Any of that mean anything? Does that just sound good or sound ominous?
I always look at it, but it seems like invariably the teams you think they're going to beat end up losing to. You never know. And I think Wally will tell you a lot of it has to do how a team is playing now, how they're feeling about themselves. But I did notice today. I was just actually looking at it for the first time ever this year. I think Fangraphs projects the Mets over the Braves and to get the wild card berth. For weeks they had the Mets way behind the Braves. I think a lot of it had to do with strength of schedule. But I think now, well, the Braves got so many injuries and they just lost this Ronaldo Lopez. I think that's part of it. And the Braves got the Dodgers this weekend. Mets have the Phillies, and I think it's going to come down to those 3 games in Atlanta in about 2 weeks. But one thing about the Mets is it feels like they've played all year. They've kind of played some of their best baseball against the better teams on the schedule, and it's kind of played down at times to the other teams. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of the schedule. I just think right now I feel like the Mets are playing maybe their best baseball, all around baseball they've played all year.
Yeah. Now, while Wally changes,
I see that.
How about this though, John? If you cover New York baseball on the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th, the Yankees have the Orioles, the final 3 games between those two, and that's going to probably be for first place, if that matters. And the Mets will be battling the Braves. If you're a New York baseball fan, man, that's 3 days on the calendar you want to make yourself available.
Yeah, hey, listen, you got to have 2 screens in your living room like I do, so you can watch them both. But yeah, I mean, what's that?
No, I just got, I just want to kind of switch a little bit. I'm trying to think, as you see, I put my
I see that
jersey on that Steiner never got from the old timers day. So they never got it. They were paying these people money for these things. And
it's not the same size you wore as a player, is it?
Hey,
look at that broad
uniform. No, I know. I look good. Hey,
you look good.
I got to ask you a question. Seriously, and I go back to you, Danny Castellanos, God rest his soul, Marty rest his soul, Marty Noble, Bob Clappage, who some people were fans, some people weren't.
Yeah.
Why has the game changed in the sports writing business? You guys were tough as shit on us players, and now it seems to me that they're so soft. I mean, don't you want to hear the truth all the time?
Yeah, I know fans do, but it's a different world now, Wally. I mean, for one thing, there's cameras everywhere, so everybody's worried about cameras and being recorded and everything else. I think that's part of it, and I think a lot of it has to do with access. Now everybody wants access more so than they just want to. I remember, even when I was on the beat, I needed to be able to talk to you guys, but I also had to write columns when you weren't playing well and kind of be tough about it. And I think, I don't know, maybe there was more of an understanding in those days of players that it was, you had to take the heat in New York. Now it seems like everybody's always worried about, the New York, the big bad media and all that. But I think you're right. I think it is different now. I don't think, you still get, the back page headlines have kind of disappeared too, just because newspapers, they're irrelevant to newspapers now. So maybe that's part of it. But I do feel like as a whole, the coverage isn't maybe as tough as it was in those days.
John, what I find interesting, having covered the Mets locker rooms and, the opponent, the Yankees, and now I live in Arizona, so for many years, the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
It used to be, for example, the worst team money could buy, that Met team. I literally hated going to the games because that locker room was miserable.
Oh.
It was one miserable guy. It was Eddie Murray and Vince Coleman.
Oh
my God. I saw Vince Coleman at a Circle K here. I swear to God, I wanted to go up to him and just rip him. But anyway, but nowadays, with so many media opportunities, I think the players have become a lot more cooperative and realize there is a job to do. And if I'm a miserable guy, my career after I'm done playing, if I want to stay in the game, in that way, is over.
Well, I think you're right, but I think a lot of it has to do with these guys for years now, from the time they sign, they're coached what to say and what not to say, and they know there's cameras in their face all the time. So, I mean, but to go back to your point about, I mean, listen, me and Clappish and I wrote the book on worst team money could buy, so we went through it. But at the same time, part of that book was how we went from the greatest team to cover, which was Wally's Mets, the late '80s into the early '90s, to the worst team. So I think it wasn't necessarily, it had to do a lot with the personalities. That team in the '80s, they loved to talk. They had great personalities. I loved to go to the clubhouse because every day I was going to have something interesting to talk to, somebody interesting to talk to about, and they were going to have something to say. I don't know. That team that they brought in the '90s was just a bad group of guys that dealing with the media. I still can't believe Frank Cashin. He, as great as he did he's assembling that team in the '80s that won a championship. He did just as poor a job of destroying it because he thought guys wanted too much money or they were too outspoken or whatever, and they just ruined that team. So that was actually what a lot of that book was about, and we had a lot of fun writing it. But those late '80s teams. I mean, Wally will tell you, we used to end up sometimes in the same bar after the game as they did, having a beer and, talking about baseball or whatever, off the record or whatever. And those days are long gone too, just because of the nature of now players they're so afraid of being put in any kind of situation where there might be a camera and they might say something that they come to regret.
What was Wally like? Just tell us the truth. I'm sorry, Wally. Tell us and tell us the truth. What was Wally like after a win and a loss? Was he the same? Was he a miserable SOB like he is to me on this show?
Listen, Wally, the greatest thing about Wally was there was no fake about anything he said. He was the same guy, win or lose, and he was going to tell you the truth, what he thought, and he didn't care about the repercussions. I always remember, I remember one time after a loss, one of those maybe '88 or '89, whatever. What was your last year? '88, Wally, or '89? With the Mets.
88 was my last year with the Mets.
I think it was one of those things. You guys had a great year, obviously, but I remember some rookie coming up and making a start against you. You guys had never faced, and I think shut you out or whatever. And everybody's like, well, listen, we hadn't seen the guy, and blah, blah, blah. And Wally said, I don't care if we hadn't seen him. That guy was terrible. We should have scored 8 runs or whatever. And that's Wally, man. He gave it to you on a nightly basis. And that's why we love the guy, because you knew you were getting it straight from him. And he was going to tell you what he thought, whether it was saying about Darryl Strawberry. Hey, Darryl, nobody gets sick 18 times a year, or it was whatever, that was Wally. That's why he was one of the greats.
I appreciate it, Harp. It's funny. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about Stern, what he has done with the Mets. I go back, and this team was so bad at the start of the year. You got Iglesias. Vientos finally got an opportunity to play. They brought in Martinez. I think, I'm just, looking from the outside in. I don't get to watch the games as much as probably you do, but these guys were huge, man, to turn this organization around. And they're not, Martinez is a great player. He's got power. He's got huge power to right center field. Iglesias, I thought in the minor leagues when I was coaching for the Mets, was one of the best shortstops that I'd ever seen in the minor leagues. And I think they turned it around. Lindor is definitely the MVP for the Mets. He's done. What happened yesterday in yesterday's game is crazy. Getting no hits through 8 innings, and then he hits a home run to tie it, and the rest is history. But Stern is a smart guy. I think. I don't know the guy. Never met him, but he's turned the organization around. You're there every day in New York. How do you see this guy, what he's done? I know what he did with Milwaukee. I think he's done a pretty good job. I'm just looking for insight on what other people think.
Absolutely, Wally. Don't forget, Steve Cohen chased this guy for like 3 years, waited for him to become available, get out of his contract with the Brewers. He'd heard a lot about him. He wanted him. And he went out and made 1-year deals. This really always goes back to last year at the trade deadline. I got to give Steve Cohen credit for kind of realizing it wasn't working with Scherzer and Verlander. He was willing to eat big money on their contracts and trade them and get prospects back and basically do a reset. And so, Mets fans were kind of bracing for the worst because they were told, listen, we're not going to spend at the top of the market. It's going to be kind of almost like a reset year. But then Stearns went out and signed these short-term deals for Severino, for Manaea, who's been unbelievable, and then J.D. Martinez. He waited him out and got him at the right price. So he got a lot of guys that have worked out in that respect. And it's because if it had continued to go south the way it was going early in the year, they could have traded those guys on one-year deals and gotten something back for them. But then you're right. They brought up Iglesias. They signed him in the offseason. The guy's I call him magic hands. I mean, the guy makes plays that nobody else can make. He doesn't have the greatest range, but he makes plays. They made a couple of double plays in that game last weekend that just changed the whole game, him and Lindor. So you're right. Him, and then J.D. Martinez as well. And then, at the trade deadline, he went out and bolstered that bullpen, which needed help. He got Maton, who's been good. He got Stanek, who's been okay. And then also got Jesse Winker, who's hit a couple of huge home runs for them. And he didn't give up a lot. He didn't give a lot of top prospects. They were committed to keeping their prospects because they want to build something that's going to be sustainable with the farm system. And so they didn't sell out prospects, but they did help the team. So, and that was Stearns' reputation in Milwaukee, as a guy could find value without spending a ton of money. And so that's what he's done. And he's put this team now, we're giving it a chance to win this year and still keep the big picture projection of building for the future, which I think they'll do. And I think they will go out and spend more next offseason. I'm sure they're going to go after Soto, maybe a Corbin Burns, something like that. And then they're going to start to bring in some of these prospects as well. So it feels like it's a really good team, Cohen and Stearns, for the future here with the Mets.
I have to tell you, John, I was not an advocate of getting rid of Buck Showalter. Not that I thought he was the greatest, but I think Carlos Mendoza might be the best of the first-time managers. He's more aggressive. I don't have the numbers, but it seems to me that they take more chances on the base paths. I like that players are really held accountable. Jeff McNeil, you're hitting 198. You're making $12.5 million? Well, this guy Iglesias is making X dirt compared to you, but he's a better player right now, so you're going to sit. That takes balls.
Yeah.
Not a lot of managers. And then I also like the way he does not baby the pitchers. He doesn't over baby the pitchers.
Yeah.
So I like his approach, and I really like the job that he has done. Give me some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm impressed too. I'll tell you, he's as you said, for a first-year guy, you never know what you're going to get. He's been in New York as a bench coach, but until you're in the big seat, as Wally knows, and you're dealing with the media on a daily basis, we saw guys like Mickey Callaway come in and fail badly, and so part of it was because of the media. And Mendoza, I was a Buck guy too, but Buck was a guy who never wanted to give you a straight answer, and he'd always kind of dance around questions. And Mendoza gives you to it pretty straight. He's not afraid to be. He's not overly critical of players, but he's not afraid to say, "Hey, the guy didn't have it tonight." I do like that, and I like the fact that early on he showed you he has a feel for the game. He's not just going to be one of these managers that goes strictly by the analytics and things like that. He sometime early in the year, I remember him going out in the 8th inning to the mound, and Quintana was on the mound pitching really well, and it was a matchup. I forget who was coming up, but it looked like it was a kind of matchup that you bring in the reliever, just kind of go by the analytics. He went out there and talked to Quintana, and he wanted to hear from Quintana that he was going to finish, gave him a chance to finish, and he did that. He finished the inning and got out of it. He's done that a few other times this year, which gives you a little bit of feel, and I think he does have a feel, and as you said, he's held guys accountable. Remember, Jorge Lopez throws the glove in the stands, and I'm telling you, that was I know from kind of behind the scenes, that was Mendoza's doing more than anything to say, hey, I want him out of here. I want to set a tone here. I want to let guys know we're not going to do stuff like that. And that was from then on. Remember, they had that team meeting that day, and from then on, they've played a lot better. So he does do things like that. And even yesterday, I thought it was interesting. Alvarez has really been struggling slumping offensively, but Mendoza was convinced that he saw better swings in recent days. So day game after a night game, normally that's a spot where Torrens is going to be catching, but he put Alvarez in because he liked the way he was swinging, wanted to give him another chance before the off day. And sure enough, he ends up hitting a huge home run in extra innings, or a ninth inning, as well as after Lindor's big home run. So I think he's got a feel for his players and for the game that I really like, and he's not just one of these by-the-numbers managers.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Johnny. That I knew nothing about this guy, and I'm a pretty good critic about which about different people, but I think the guy's done a great job. I think he's handled the team as good as anybody could probably handle the team, and so it's good to see that. I got to give the credit to the general manager, to Stearns, the things that he's done, the people he's brought in. I think he's done a great job with the guys he's brought in, the additions, all those type of things. I think these guys they might be for real. We could never say that years ago.
Yeah.
But they might be for real. I mean, I'm thinking, they're a game ahead of the Braves now in a wild card, but hey, they got a chance to catch the Padres that are only, or the Diamondbacks are only 2 games ahead of them.
Yeah.
They got a chance to be somebody. I just don't know. My question to you is, you're there. Is the starting pitching good enough to match up?
I tell you, the starting pitching's been really good. I do want to go back to one point you made about Mendoza. You said you like what you've seen too, and one thing I was going to add about him was he actually, he reminds me of you a little bit as a manager. I mean, maybe not as wild and crazy throwing bats as we've seen all the videos over the years, but what he's.
Oh, damn it! I'll have to talk to him.
You know what? He gained the trust of his players, and when you gain the trust of his players, like I know you did, then you can feel like you can criticize them, and they know that's coming from a good place because you got their backs, but you're going to let them know when they don't do well. And I think that's how you get the most out of players. I know that's how you did it. So I do think he does remind you in that respect. Maybe not as quotable or as crazy as you, but good. But to get back to your point, they've actually had the 3rd best starting pitching ERA in baseball since July 1st, which is hard to believe. I never thought it was going to be that kind of rotation. But David Peterson has pitched to another level. He had a bad one the other night, but he's been really good lately. Severino's been good, and Manaea. He made a conscious choice to try and kind of emulate Chris Sale. Dropped his arm angle down, started throwing like Sale. Since then, man, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's holding hitters to like a 180 average or something over his last 9 or 10 starts. So you got those 3. Quintana's been a little bit up and down, but he generally keeps you in the game. And then, they brought in Blackburn at the deadline. He was okay. Then he got hurt. McGill the other night goes and throws 6 shutout innings. So they're getting some really good starting pitching. And I think the top 3 guys would give them a chance in the postseason. Because they've all been going deep into games, which is important too. Because early in the year they were burning out that bullpen. They weren't getting enough innings out of the starters. They're going deep into games, and that's giving their bullpen a chance to take a deep breath and set guys in the positions they should be. So if they get there, and I think it probably does come down to those 3 games in Atlanta. But if they get there, I think they got a chance to win a series or 2.
Multimedia star John Harper joining us here on 86, the Wally Backman Show. In regards to that, I asked Wally this off the air, and we'll get his response on the air, and I want to get yours too, because you have 2 different. Wally is the player manager. You is the guy who covers the game. I saw an article in The Athletic. It said the Mets were already lining up their pitching for the Braves series. Can you line up your pitching 10 days out with so many unknowns? There's still, 9 games in the 10 days, whatever it is. Wally, you take it first as a manager. Could you really start to align your pitching for and by the way, if they get whacked by the Phillies, the Braves won't mean anything anyway. So do you really set up your pitching for a series that far away?
Well, you can think about it, but I don't think you can set it. Right now, I think Manaea is their number 1 guy. I don't know the exact numbers against the Braves or whatever, but, they've got 6 or 7 games before they play the Braves. So the most important game that they have is today. And so to set your rotation up is something that, you want to be able to set it up for matchups, the guys that pitch the best. But, 7 to 10 days before you get to that, it's really tough. You don't know if injuries are going to happen, what's going to happen. But it's nice if you potentially can do that. But I don't see any team being able to set their rotation up 10 days in advance. I see you setting it up for the postseason with matchups, but I think matchups are huge. And your starters, sometimes you got to go with your gut. You can't go by all the analytics like John had said before, but sometimes good teams beat bad teams. And I think, the Mets, the road trip they had when they went to the West Coast, as I said on another podcast that we did, was huge. They had to win, and they did. So right now, you look at all the big names that are going to be in the postseason, the starting pitchers and things like that. I'm telling you, I'm picking Manaea. He's my guy. This guy has done amazing things. They just don't get good swings off this guy. And so, to me, he's their number one guy. I don't know how Mendoza's setting it up or whatever, and I don't have all the numbers about who's pitched so well against each of the teams. I'll have them in time, but they don't have the big names. They're going to have to overcome. There's always players that do better than what you expect when you get to postseason. Your big name players can do their own thing, but sometimes they don't perform. But it's the guys like when I played, the Kevin Mitchells, guys like that did things that made us a winner. It's not that Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling and Doc and Straw and all those guys didn't make us winners, because they did. They helped us win. But it takes 25 guys to win a championship. So, I think that the Mets, they don't have the big pitching names, but I think that they've got internally what they're doing right now. They've got an opportunity.
John, can you set up, from your perspective, can you set up a staff for a series that's not for 10 days?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I was doing some heavy preparation for this podcast, knowing you guys would have hard-hitting questions, and I was looking at it today. I think that, as Wally said, the key is Manaea. If you look at it, if they stay in turn right now, it's to keep everybody, you not skip anybody, even though they have a couple off days in there. Manaea would miss the Braves series. So I think what they're trying to do is decide whether to keep Manaea on every fifth day, which would mean skipping McGill probably one or two times, and making sure Manaea is available for that Brave series. And I would try and do that, because I think, as you guys, as Wally said, Manaea has been that good. So that's the one thing I would try to do. Otherwise, I think I would just try and keep it as it is. But I think if you need to skip McGill once or twice, then go ahead and do it, and keep Manaea on every fifth day, because that would set him up, I think, to pitch the first game. I forget, one of those games anyway. So, because otherwise he would miss it. So I don't think he look, you said you got to win them all. You got to go out and beat the Phillies this weekend. And, you can't just look at that series. But I do think I would want Manaea available for that series, because those three games could end up being the difference. Because if it's one or two, the Mets got to go out and win 2 out of 3 in that series probably to win the wild card.
Yeah. Last one from me. I see the Diamondbacks a lot. I obviously, I have an affinity for them. But putting that aside, I think they're the best team in the National League, and I think they very well could prove it again if people thought last year was an aberration. I mean, and they've been playing without 3 of their best regulars,
I know,
and still scoring more runs than anybody in baseball. From your assessment, you're looking at the top teams. Who is the best team in the National League? And what do you make of the Dodgers and so many injuries that could pitch in the postseason? Yamamoto pitched well the other day. He came back.
Yeah.
Give me your assessment on the Dodgers, too.
Yeah, that's kind of the knee-jerk response is always to say the Dodgers, because they're so good, so loaded with talent, but they got so many injuries. You still don't know about Glass now. I know you said, but Yamamoto came back, but, is he going to be okay? They got Kershaw again is hurt. They got other pitching injuries. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. Obviously, they score a lot of runs, and they got that top-heavy top 3. But beyond that, the lineup at the bottom is a little bit suspect. So the one thing about the Diamondbacks, man, that lineup, they've scored. I think they're leading the majors in runs scored.
Yeah.
They score a lot of runs. If you get Gallen and some of those other starters on a roll, then they could be as good as anybody. I tell you, though, the Padres are, they could be as good as anybody, too. If they're starting pitching now, you got Darvish back. I mean, Musgrove, maybe it's only against the Mets. He looks like Sandy Koufax against the Mets. Or should be maybe Don Drysdale, a right-hander. But if they get their starting pitching to give him innings, they went out and made those trades for all these.
They're about your age, right?
Yeah, and
Are they about your age?
Who's that?
Drysdale and those guys.
Yeah, I know. I'm showing my age. That's what it's. Bob Gibson. That's the era I grew up in. And you're right there, Wally. Who are you kidding? Come on.
I know. Hey, we've had some good times. I know that I don't know if you answered the whole questions, but I know you got a job to do tonight. Do it good, would you? I want to hear some shit tonight.
No, it's off night tonight.
Johnny,
are you on tonight?
Yeah, off night.
No, he's got to go to work for SNY tonight.
Going to do TV.
I want to thank you. You what, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm going in to do TV, so we'll be talking about all this the Mets stuff. Yeah.
Wally, how about this, Wally?
It could be a fun year in New York here. The Yankees.
I got to say one thing.
Yeah.
I got to interrupt you, Johnny.
Yeah.
They must do a hell of a makeup job on you.
Wow.
Sure, they got the spray guns.
I love you, brother.
Wow.
They bring out the hydraulics.
I know. I've seen it.
You know what? I have to say this. Maybe it's the lighting, and I'm just talking about the look. But in the lighting, Wally, does John not look a little bit like Robert F. Kennedy? Has anybody ever told you that before, that you look a little bit like Robert F. Kennedy?
Junior?
He just
the one who was running for president and is not anymore. You look a little bit like him.
I know he's in shape, so I'll take that.
All right.
I try and stay in shape. I've been trying to get Wally on the racquetball court for years. I can't get him to play me in racquetball, but I'll take that for sure.
You know what you got to do? You got to work yourself into
We're going to play racquetball. We're going to play racquetball, and you're going to be in front of me, and I'm going to hit that ball so hard and hit you right in the middle of the back, and just watch you cringe.
I can feel it already.
Yeah, no, you've been hit before.
Hey, John, you got to work yourself into a fishing trip with this guy. This guy, let me tell you, John, I don't know if you like the fish. I only like to eat it. But this guy is a master fisherman right here.
Yeah, I've heard that. He's told stories, but I need a little more activity in fishing. I know that you got to have a case of beer if you're going to go fishing. I know that, but
right.
But hey, listen, you come play racquetball. I'll go fishing with you.
You got it. I'll do it, Johnny. Again, I know that you got work to do. We've been doing this for a while. Seriously, I want to thank you a ton. You've been a great guy to me, to the team, to the organization. I used to hate you, but now I learned to like you. So you've been a great guy, and I appreciate it. And I want to have you on again at some point in time, maybe during the postseason, hopefully if they get there, because I know you say what you think too. You might say that I say what I think, but I know you say what you think, and you're right most of the time, not always.
Well, thanks.
Most of the time, you're right.
I appreciate that, Wally. And let me just
go to work.
Before I go, let me just say, it's just a shame you didn't get a true chance to manage in the majors, because I think you would have been a hell of a manager. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. You had a way of reaching guys that not a lot of managers have, because you were so true to your personality as far as good and bad, and they responded to you. I remember Dan Uggla talking about how you were the best manager you ever played for in the minors. So it's really a shame. I would have loved to seen you get a chance with the Mets, but it didn't work out. But you never know. You're only about 80 or so. Maybe you got another chance somewhere along the
way. Hey, you never know, Johnny. And I might bring you in as the clubhouse guy.
I'll be the PR guy.
It's been a pleasure, John. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Great talking to you.
Johnny, thank you very much, buddy.
It's a fucking team effort. Do it.
Wally, I really enjoyed John Harper. I've been reading him for years. I get a chance to see him once in a while on SNY. I've always thought he was a quality reporter. You asked a great question about homers and everything, which was great. And I think you're exactly right on, Wally. I think the sports media has become soft, and they're afraid to challenge these days. I thought that was a brilliant observation on your part.
Yeah, no, you know what? Harp was Harp and other guys, they were so good about they did, in my opinion, in the last 40 years, the best job that a writer could do. So all these other young individuals, they need to read about what Harper did, Dan Castellano, Bob Clappage, Dan Castellano. I mean, they need to read about what these guys did. And they actually made a name for themselves. For 40 years, I've been friends with this guy. And the reason why is not because he beat me up, because he did, but he is a serious guy about analytics, a serious guy about the game, which all of them were. And so we don't see that in today's game. And they are so important to the game of baseball that it's to me, it's unbelievable that we don't have more people like this.
I agree. I think the media has become egregiously soft, but the listeners are not, and the viewers are not. If you want to get in touch, the viewers and listeners ask better questions than most of the media folks. If you really want to know the truth,
They
Wally,
do.
and you can send in some questions, comments, whatever it might be. We've got a number of social media outlets. On X, you can get Wally at Wally_Backman6. On YouTube, check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Wally Backman Show. On Facebook, it's at Wally Backman. Instagram, at Wally_Backman86. You could also get me on email at chbr40@gmail.com. Wally, let's get to some social media. There was a lot. You posted some thoughts this week on Eddie Kranepool, and just a ton of reaction to Eddie. So let me give you a couple of these. From Nick Grolick, Eddie dealt with a lot of health issues. This guy was definitely a fighter. You want to talk about that, Wally? You knew Eddie a little bit. You were able to his health issues and everything.
Eddie had a kidney issue. This guy fought. He fought for everything. I get it. He was a young player in the big leagues because he was talented. Later on in life, Eddie had some health issues. I remember talking to Eddie and at the not fantasy camp, but the old timers day, and Eddie said, and I asked Eddie, I said, what was it like? This is probably my best story. What was it like to go to the big leagues at 17? You're from New York. 17, I don't know if people realize at 17 years old, I went to the big leagues at 20 and I was a baby. But Eddie said some things about going to the big leagues at 17. He really didn't know what to say. And
well, you couldn't drink.
Person,
you can't join the army,
player.
but you can go play baseball. I mean, that's at 17,
yes,
you can't buy a drink.
You know what? No, Eddie Kranepool is a great baseball player. I don't care what anybody says. Anybody argues that, I'll fight him. He was a great baseball player.
You also posted a really nice 9/11 tribute, which, of course, was Wednesday, the 23rd anniversary. Wally, the one thing I will say is I covered the 01 World Series, Diamondbacks and Yankees. And obviously, being from New York, you have to make a pilgrimage there and pay your respects. And I will say, Wally, if you've never smelled death, we went in October of 01, and it was just as awful a scene as you could really. I thought I was on a movie set. If you really want to know the truth, I thought I was on a freaking movie set. And it was absolutely miserable. I thought your tribute was excellent, by the way.
No, in 2011, Bruce, my aunt called me. I was laying in bed, I was supposed to do on 2012 with Geraldo a lunch engagement on the 100 and whatever floor it was. And my aunt called me and said, "You're not going to New York." And, for all those people that lost family members and things like that, and, if it was a day later, it could have been me. But, it's not about me. It's about the people. It's about the firefighters. It's about the New York City Police. It's all about them, because the things that they did is absolutely 100% remarkable, because people don't understand what those people have to accomplish to be the people that they are. But you know what? It was a sad day. God rest everybody's soul. And I love them all.
We did get this email, this correspondence, excuse me, from Jeffrey Hernandez. A great picture, Mr. Backman. We don't know each other. I was a first responder. I loved watching you play for the Mets. I went to my first game in 1975. To all those great first responders out there.
The first responders, let me tell you, their job, and you know what? I can't imagine how important their job was, but their job that they did was phenomenal. So, it's hard. Like I said, it's hard to respond to those guys. I have some really big attachments with some fire people and some officers from New York, and the things that they did, I can't second guess anything. I never would. I wouldn't even think about it. But what they did was phenomenal for the state of New York.
Yeah, completely agree. And finally, from Steve Lon, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Steve, on our episode with Hojo last week. He says, Wally, Hojo isn't on Facebook, but great conversation. I had forgotten how high your average was in 1986. Wally hit 332 in 1986. When you and Hojo go fishing, can I join you? I haven't fished since I was a kid.
Hey, my question, my answer to that is 100 fucking percent you can fish with us. If you get seasick, you're going to get sick. And so there is, when the boat goes over the bar, they call it a bar, it's up and down. And it usually gets a little bit simpler. But when the boat goes over the bar, there's no turning back, buddy. If you're sick, you're sick. You either fish or lay down in the fucking V berth. So
wow,
that's what we got.
Man. Look, I want to say this about fish. I know you take fishing very seriously, and I respect that. So don't come at me too hard. But when the gentleman sends in a message and says he hasn't fished since 75, it's fishing, man. Just throw the water, throw the line. You don't lose your touch in fishing, okay, because you haven't fished.
No.
You don't become a better or worse fisherman. Come on, Wally. Let's set it straight here. I realize there's a little bit of skill, but you got to get the fish to grab the line. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how far you throw it and all these different things.
I'm gonna let you know a little secret.
Yeah.
To everybody. Okay, so 80% of the ocean has no fish. 20% of the ocean, it's the truth. 20% has fish. So, God, Wally Backman must be good fishing.
Wait,
but that's
is
the
it
truth.
harder? Is it harder to fish? Is it harder to be good at fishing or golf?
Well, for me, it's harder for golf, but
Okay.
Fishing
all
is
right.
easy to
You
me.
tell
But
me
golf
fishing is
good.
harder than golf. I'm walking off the set. All right, I'm walking off the set
Yeah.
because there's thousands of
No.
green miles, and guess what? My
But,
ball is never on that.
Bruce, my point is you can't go to a fishing pond and catch fish. Go to a river, go to an ocean and catch fish. And you might change your story right here.
All right,
Because
all right.
fishing is not that easy, but when you're good, like I am, you're good.
Oh, all right, all right. There you go. I guess that basically puts an end to that. When you're good, you're good. All right, keep the correspondence coming, ladies and gentlemen. We're on X, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Gmail. We are where you are. Don't forget next week, Roger McDowell. We close it out with Last Licks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our Last Licks is our final episode. I want to start it out with Eddie Kranepool. Again, we just talked about him, but what an icon with the New York Mets. Lots of players. We've lost 4 this year, but I'm going to say that Eddie Kranepool they're all important. Love the guy, had many good conversations with the guy. God, I miss him already. So, there's a few things with Last Licks that I want to talk about. I know it's a short segment, but I'm going to tell you this. Actually, no, I'm going to let Bruce tell you his Last Licks on.
Okay, I got something
Bruce,
for you.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay. I got something for you. Now, we paid homage to James Earl Jones at the beginning of the show. Wally, a couple of things here. In a moment, we'll get to the most commanding voice that you've ever heard. But, Wally, I have what I have designated as the 2 most famous lines ever used in the motion pictures when it comes to the game of baseball. Now, others may have some, and you can certainly let us know about it if you want to hit us up on any of our social media. But there are 2. I'm going to ask you, which one did you think was more powerful, okay? All right, let's go to
no
one.
fucking. There
No.
is no
Hold on.
fucking crying in baseball.
What's that?
There is no fucking crying in baseball.
No. Okay, hold on. Here's number 1, and it's not. There's no crying in baseball. Number 1, Wally, is actually the voice of a shadowy figure you never see on the screen, courtesy of A League of Their Own. Excuse me, a courtesy of Field of Dreams.
Right.
If you build it, he will come.
Well, I tell you, Wally, if you build it, he will come. It's pretty damn powerful now.
I know what it is.
Did you cry? Tell the truth. Did you see, if you saw, did you cry Field of Dreams?
No, I might have got teary-eyed a little bit.
Okay, all right. Because you come from small town.
It's my favorite line in baseball.
All right, let's get to the one. I didn't even get a chance to introduce it. I think a lot of people might say choice number 2 is the most famous baseball line. And, of course, it comes from Tom Hanks and League of Their Own.
Are you crying?
No crying in baseball.
Are you crying?
There is none. If you take second place, you're the first loser.
No crying in baseball.
I think the name of his character was Jimmy Duggan in the movie. I could be wrong about that. And he was the manager, and one of his players is crying. And, I don't know, Wally. I don't know. I still like that. If you build it, he will come.
I hear you.
Wally, has there ever been a more commanding voice in Hollywood? I submit to you, James Earl Jones. I submit to you the voice of Darth Vader. May be the most iconic voice anywhere. In other words, if I'm in a room and we're talking, and I hear this voice, I'm stopping, like E.F. Hutton. For me, Wally, in the entertainment world, it's got to be James Earl Jones. In the sports world, I'm going with Howard Cosell, the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Unique
The
voice,
best voice ever
in the history of sports. I'm going to
Yes.
go with Howard Cosell. And in music, Wally, I'm going to go with Bruce Springsteen.
Okay. You know,
what do you got?
I made a list of this stuff. I made a list. So it's not in order. But for the broadcasters, I got Al Michaels, Howard Cosell, Vince Scully, Jack Buck, and Harry Carey. You know what?
Do you want to pick one of them?
Jack Buck's son. Huh?
You want to pick one of them?
I what? I like
You want to
them
pick
all.
one of them?
You know what? I would say Harry Carey because what he did in Chicago was amazing to me. You know, let's go to the. You know, I know it's off. It's not baseball, but let's go to the. Let's go to some of the music.
All right, I'm going with
I'm not
Bruce
a big
Springsteen.
music. Oh well, shit. He's on my list.
All right.
You know,
Who else
I
you got on your list?
I got guys like, let's say Stevie Nicks. We're talking the top 5, whatever. I might have 6. Stevie Nicks, Edge of
From
17.
Phoenix? She's from Phoenix. I've
Yes,
seen her
he
in
is from
concert.
Phoenix.
Yeah,
You
I've seen her
are
in
so
concert. Very good.
Phoenix-oriented. God damn it. Bruce Springsteen, Thunder Rolls, Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stone, Johnny Cash. I'm going way back to my mother and father. I Walk the Line. And
All right,
you know
that's a
what?
good
And
one.
I'm going to say I'm going to say the best one. No, I got to go to
All right,
Billy
the best
Joel.
one.
Billy Joel is my number one guy. Billy Joel is my number one guy. There's no doubt. New York State of Mind. He's my number one guy. I'm not giving him in order, but I do have to say this for my wife. George Strait. I Cross My Heart. That's what we got married to. So those are my guys for singing. And as you can see, I'm a country guy, but I love all music.
All right. Next week, Roger McDowell will appear on the program, so we look forward to that. The king of the hot foot, ladies and gentlemen, and a damn good pitching coach, too, by the way. A really good pitching coach in the big league. So we look forward to that. We thank John Harper again, New York media icon for multimedia New York star for joining us today. It's 86, the Wally Backman Show.